All right, so thank you everybody for joining today. I'm Will Moyer. I'm one of the course directors for the Clinical Trials Methodology course. I'm really excited that we have a lot of faculty on this, and for those who are reviewing it later. Again, we're going over just some of the procedures for the small groups and the course in general. And we'll hopefully have some time to share some insights from past years. Just by way of overall introduction, this is our 6th cohort of the Clinical Trials Methodology course in this iteration. And we are really excited to have a smaller cohort of around 25 trainees this coming year. In past years, we had been up to sizes of about 40, but this year I think things are going to be a little bit more intimate. Most of the small groups have 3 trainees and have 2 or 3 faculty, and we're getting the small group started next week, which is earlier than we've done before, but I think that gives us more time to iterate, which I think is the most important thing. The residential course is in, as you all know, you have it on your calendars in later July in Iowa City. And I think with that, Joy, I can no longer find the list of everybody who's in the room. So do you want to just call on people quickly to introduce themselves? Or it might be
sure. Dr. Hartman.
Hi, I'm Adam
Dr. Hartman.
Yep, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, I'm Adam Hartman. I'm one of the program directors at the Division of Clinical Research at NINDS. I'm a child neurologist and epileptologist, and I'm just happy to be here. This is my 3rd year. I'll say that too.
Dr. Coffey. Or Dr. Foster.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Hello? Great. Hey, I'm Eric Foster. I'm a biostatistician at Ferring Pharmaceuticals, formerly at Iowa with Chris, and glad to be back for another year.
Great, thank you. Dr. Corley. You're on mute. No, I can hear you through the wall though. How about now? No.
Okay, I'll do it. Fred Corley is an assistant professor of emergency medicine. Oh, wait, is he there now?
Are you there now?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Okay, I hear you.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm Fred Corley. I'm emergency physician at the University of Michigan, and I'm a recent grad of the course. So I'm glad to be here teaching.
Awesome, thank you. Then Dr. Habenberger.
Hi, my name is Dietrich Habenberger. I'm a movement disorder neurologist. This is my 4th year in the course as faculty. I'm a graduate of Vail 2009, proud. I've been at NINDS since 2014 in the intramural program, was directing a clinical trials unit, and in January of this year jumped the fence to industry, and I'm now at Neurocrine Biosciences in San Diego, and I am medical director for early clinical development.
Thank you. Dr. Beely.
Hi, I'm Kurt Veely. I'm a biostatistician from Berry Consultants. I specialize in Bayesian adaptive trials, and I'm not sure I've been here from the beginning, but close. Been here a while. I'm happy to be back as well.
Awesome. Dr. Gutman.
Hi, this is Lori Gutman, and I am one of the co-PIs. I'm at the University of Iowa, and excited for all the faculty that we have this year. and standing in line at a Star Wars convention at this current time. But this course is so important to me that I had to be on the call.
Dr. Quigg.
Hi, I'm Mark Quigg. Lori, these aren't the droids you're looking for. I'm at the University of Virginia. I'm an epilepsy and sleep specialist, and I'm chair of the Research and Training Council of the American Epilepsy Society. And I haven't been at this course before, and it'll be fun to see what it's like.
I can already sense that the force is strong with this one.
I'm impressed he didn't mention basketball. Every reason to brag.
Well, if I played on the team, I would brag a lot. As it was, I just bravely showed up at work the next day with a hangover like everybody else.
Next, we have Dr. Conway.
Hi, I'm Robin Conway. I'm a Washington Capitals fan. I am an adult neurologist at NINDS in the Division of Clinical Research, and I wrote the RFA for this course. Looking forward to working with all of you.
And then last but not least, we have Dr. Martin.
Hi, I'm Renee Martin. I'm a biostatistician at the Medical University of South Carolina. And this is my second year doing this, and I had so much fun doing it last year, I had to do it again.
And is Chris here? Was he able to unmute himself, to introduce himself, since we skipped him before?
Can you hear me now?
Yep, we can.
Yeah, so I'm Chris Coffey. I'm biostatistician at the University of Iowa and one of the co-PIs for the course. And I've been involved in the course really for the whole time and even in the prior iterations of the Vail version.
All right, great. So I'm going to try to just give somewhat of a relatively brief overview, but leave certainly time for questions and some shared insights from some of the small group leaders from the prior years of the course. So, I know that you all can read better than I can, or you can read faster than I can talk, but just to hit some high points from the syllabus, as you've all have gotten into this room, you know that we use BlueJeans as a cloud-based meeting platform for small group meetings, webinars, and then the mock study section. One sort of thing in contrast to perhaps other groups that you have been on is we do really hope that you can get your webcam working, and we can enjoy it, or I can help try to make that work, just so that you can start to get to know the trainees as you start to have the small groups with them. This is a sort of key thing in terms of just kind of being present and being engaged with them. You can also try to do other things with BlueJeans in terms of potentially taking real-time notes while trainees are giving presentations, depending on your level of comfort. And again, that's not required. And it seems like pressing the annotate button might not be the best thing to try until we've played around with that more. We do automatically record these. They're not posted publicly, but your small group will have the ability to kind of go back through it and look through. I would definitely encourage the trainees in your group to take some note, for them to take some notes while you're talking. But one thing that is, I think, a lesson learned over the years is to try to make sure that there is some sort of running track record of what sort of feedback has gone to the trainees. And a lot of times the documents they upload can serve as that, so that you know that you're not necessarily moving things forward and backwards after they go back to their local mentors. We use Mbox as our document sharing service. This is Box. It's like Dropbox, but University of Michigan uses Box. You can, in the event that you delete things, you can restore old versions of files as necessary, so it's very flexible. We encourage our trainees to purchase the Ravenna book, Clinical Trials in Neurology, Design, Conduct, and Analysis. despite being from 2012, a lot of what is written there still is very timely for the design of trials in neurology. We have put some selected chapters up in box to have the applicants review or the trainees review when they're sort of crucial bits of information. And we do put that in a pass-protected area. Our course website can be found at neurotrials.training, and we do have links to a lot of the webinars from past years there. We send some surveys out and data collection forms to the trainees and the faculty through Qualtrics. We may actually start using REDCap for some of them in the not so distant future, but one of the most important is the travel form so that we can make sure to make your flight arrangements to get to Iowa City, and we have shuttles arranged. The trainees also do small group evaluations, and everybody who attends webinars can do webinar evaluations and then residential course evaluations. We do offer CME through the generosity of the American Academy of Neurology. And then we do outcome assessments of the trainees in terms of what happens to them and their project after the course. And those, again, may start coming from REDCap. Again, not necessarily, just a little bit about what we're doing internally. This document, the syllabus and expectations, the last version we sent out, the table of contents was broken, so we'll be sure to fix that so that it says 2019 instead of 2018. And we were putting the final touches and getting confirmation in terms of some of our webinar speakers. But this document is oriented towards the trainees and the tasks that they need to accomplish as they go through the course. Some of these tasks are just basically reading this. I will be doing an introduction webinar for them next week where we go through what they will be trying to accomplish in the course. And they should also make sure to get their technical things so that they can get into Blue Jeans. And then also starting with the travel form. We do also want them to read and review the NINDS Transparency and Reporting Guidelines. This is something that probably everybody on this call is familiar with. I'll just pop it up here pretty quickly. But this is the ideas regarding rigor and reproducibility in research in terms of looking at minimizing bias and particularly for preclinical research, independent validation, replication, and discussion of the effect size in relation to potential clinical impact. So this is just something we want them to review so that they can consider that as they go forward through their clinical development process. So then the two aspects of the spring part of the course are the webinars and small. We have again we have a standard link where our webinars will be. We will be recording those and posting those to YouTube and also our website. We encourage our trainees to be in real-time attendance, and these webinars are publicly available to anybody, basically anybody in the world who wants to come to them. As long as we don't get, I think what is our limit is what, like about, it's either 100 or 200 based on the current Blue Jeans parameters. We've come close sometimes, but we haven't popped over that. So we, anyway, we record those so that they don't have to watch them synchronously, but we do like to get the input and feedback of people during those. We do want to have evaluations of those webinars afterwards so that we can continue to give feedback to the people giving those and make sure that those work the best for people. We did give an introduction to the course and the course philosophy before the application process started this year. And it's not necessarily helpful for them to re-review that if they have seen it before, but if they haven't seen it before, it's probably something they should quickly look at. Next week, in our first webinar, we're going to do a relatively quick and targeted orientation to the course, and then I'm going to give, we'll probably break it up into 2 recordings, but a quick webinar and asking a good early phase clinical trial question. And I think by this point, through their applications, we've looked at those things, and most of them are, it may not be a great early phase clinical trial question, but I think they're all in a space where they're asking good questions, and I think we can make them better. Actually, I can kind of segue into our selection process this year. Joy, do you remember exactly how many applications we got? I think it was somewhere on the order of like 48 complete applications.
Yeah, that sounds right.
But in this year, in terms of the scaling of the course, we're scaling it to about 8 small groups. So most of the small groups are 3. There's one that has 4 in this sort of new experimental biomarkers initiative. So many people who were well qualified, potentially we did not have space for them this year. So that's it's on one hand sad because we wish we could help more people this year. But on the other hand, I think it's good to show that there is a demand for the course that currently exceeds our ability to do it. And I think having done this a few times, really trying to get to that just right size, I think we're excited about our scaling of it this year. So I think we can really pay very good attention to these trainees and get them to make progress on their projects. And then this is, you can see here that these are the webinars that we're planning, just getting the final sort of confirmations from the speakers that we have on those. We do have a couple webinars that we want them to review asynchronously. What we would kind of classify as one of our classic webinars, Robert Silverglate talking about specific aims. We have the link to that there. And then a budgeting webinar also, I would say, is a classic. And we do want them to review another classic from Catherine Dillon on data management. As I mentioned, we will be giving CME for the webinars if people attend all of them, and we will be also giving CME for the residential course. So the small group session, again, we make this note here. It can potentially be productive to assign a note taker for each session. Again, if this is one of the core faculty taking the notes, or if one of the other trainees could take notes, and they could sort of switch depending on whose project is being talked about. It could be nice to email those or even add that to the current document in Box so that we can kind of see that, and you can kind of look back and say, okay, what are the things that we've done? What are the points where we've given feedback? And sometimes it's helpful to have thought of these things because if they have a mentor who wasn't on these calls, and they're welcome to join, although we haven't had that happen a lot, it can give some of the sort of work behind the answer as to here's why we recommended that they make these alterations to their design plan. One little quirk here is joining as a moderator. We won't necessarily have staff from the CTMC on every single small group. So if you can use this sort of special code here where you see that it's the web address /2765, that gives you all the rights and responsibilities of the moderator. They are set up to automatically start recording when there are 2 people in the room. And that's just to make sure that we get those all, and we will put them into the Box folders. Again, in contrast to the webinars, we don't make these things publicly available. They're just in the folders for the people in those groups. If you are the moderator, though, if things go wrong with other people, each of your groups is pretty small, but if you need to mute somebody because there's too much noise in the background or they call in on their telephone and cause static, then you do have that power if you are the moderator. But the meeting will function even if nobody comes in as the moderator. A moderator isn't required. We've set that setting in BlueJeans. So for session 1, so then we just move on to the sessions. And we have sort of, I think a goal that you get through probably 7 of these. These are recommendations in terms of the tasks that we think you should get through. Every small group does have a little bit of a different flavor. We've set up a little bit more of a hierarchical structure so that of the small groups, since we have a smaller number this year, there are a couple small groups that don't have one of the 5 course directors on them, but we've assigned a course director as a liaison to those 3 groups, so that they're not necessarily going to attend your group, but we want them to kind of be apprised as to what's going on in your group. And this year we're also going to try to have Friday morning kind of office hours, so to speak, where people can, the faculty could come as an open forum and just as a clearinghouse to ask questions. We've done this in our executive committee before. Like if I have a project that involves myasthenia, I can bounce things off Drs. Conway and Gutman. So we're going to set that out there. It's not necessarily a requirement for people to show up to, but if there are things that they want to get feedback from the other from the course directors and the other small group leaders about, we're going to open that time up as a potential time. And there'll be some more instructions about that so that people can kind of try to get ahead of any problems that might be developing with a project. But for the first session, their major goal is to introduce and define their clinical question and really the impact and the reason why they're studying this. They should complete their project information form, and we should, and they're going to be trying to do about a 5-minute elevator pitch in which we sort of discourage them from using slides. It says here, do not use slides, talking to the webcam. So we want this to be more, a little bit more TED Talky about why people should be excited about this and what, hitting the high yield topics, what disease, what phenotype, what's the preclinical justification, and then the faculty can provide some comments on the project information form questions that they might have. So then, and again, like these session thresholds are, they're a guideline, and sometimes you may need to spend more time in selecting outcome measures for one trainee. People may be moving faster than this, and they need to be accomplishing a couple of these things at once. So it is certainly fine to tailor things to the trainee's speed. One thing that I think is going to potentially help this year is things will be usually spaced out every couple weeks. One of the main things to talk about on your first session also will just be if there are any major weeks. There are more than 8 weeks between April 16th and the course. So which weeks that you're going to knock off the list and not necessarily meet because of people being out. But I think the target is to try to meet every 2 weeks, and that gives them time to iterate, reflect, and make some progress. And also that hopefully there's not such long lags that they just wait till the last minute to do things. We do ask them to turn things in about 48 hours prior to the session, so you have some time to look at them and reflect on them and perhaps write comments on them. As we know, that doesn't always happen. I think that if things, I think what I will try to emphasize to them on their orientation is the better you are at getting it in early, the more likely it is that your faculty will be able to read it more than 5 seconds before the actual session that they're doing. That being said, the faculty in our course are amazing, and I know that you can quickly read through somebody's documents even in the half hour before your sessions and still give them a wealth of very important feedback. So, again, 48 hours is the ideal, but I think we know that the trainees are busy clinicians as well. So I think, you don't necessarily need to cancel sessions if they don't turn their things in. We've not gotten to that degree of, I guess, draconian measures in the past, and I don't think we necessarily need to. So then, I won't really talk in depth about each of the remaining sessions. This is all hopefully relatively straightforward. And we've been making tweaks to this from year to year based on our programmatic meeting and reflections from the course. The overall trial concept is the next session. And then they start using a protocol template from the NIH to start filling out specific sections of the protocol. And we do use this paradigm of writing out a protocol first to really heavily vet the questions, the scientific questions, and ensure that they are, and the population and how things are going to be working. So again, the bulk of these sessions then start filling out parts of the protocol. We don't necessarily feel that every single thing needs to be completed to the point that it could be submitted to the FDA. But again, we want some thought about a lot of those areas. A new session this year could be potentially adverse event data and safety monitoring and interim analyses if they are appropriate for the design they're using. And then again, the final statistical analysis strategy. And again, we're trying a new set of tasks for this year, and we will see how we go. There's a session on budget. Some groups may not be able to have a ninth session before the course, but I would, the goal is that the trainees would try to complete this task asynchronously and maybe even send it to you for a little feedback before arriving at the course to get a sense as to what a budget should look like. There are going to be, I'm going to also potentially be able to prepare some additional examples from a single site clinical trial that I have enrolling right now that will be included for them as additional information because I think that's been there's been a lot of feedback on that in terms of what does this look like? What does a protocol look like for something that's actually going on? What does a grant look like for something that has been successfully submitted as a single site clinical trial in the modern grant format, the significance innovation approach format. And then we hope for them to have a full protocol draft by the time they come to the course. And then we have the residential course. Right now we are actively putting the final touches on the lectures and other activities that are going to occur in the small group course. For those who haven't attended before, there's a mixture of large group didactic sessions, meeting times with your small group, and times we've called office hours where the trainees meet with the faculty who aren't in their course, potentially, or other faculty who are at the course who they might have a unique opportunity to interface with. The fall webinar series, again, we're working on nailing down the final dates and making sure the presenters can be there at those times. We do have one open forum. We had a lot more of these sort of office hours open forums last year, but we do think that having one at the end to address issues arising will be good, but we don't have as many of the free form ones this year. There are a few other small group sessions. The idea of the course makes a pivot at this point in time to writing a grant proposal. Now, it is not impossible that we have some intramural applicants who don't have to write a proposal, and I think they can continue to participate in these small group sessions, and you may be able to just continue to focus on the refinement of their protocol or other issues. But for most people, they will be trying to write up some form of proposal for competitive funding. We want them to have that ready fully by October 15th, and we are planning to have mock study sections. We're going to be working on scheduling those. And one suggestion we had from one of the trainees last year was that we should provide some training to the trainees about how they could be study section members. And I think this could be actually a really fun addition this year to have more reviewers on each project by actually, we've included the trainees and allowed them to observe the mock study section before, but I think actually assigning them some proposals to review can really, after they've reviewed some training materials to see how they should be acting on a study section and preparing critiques, I think will be very eye-opening for them, and I think fun for us to have a mixture, and also just help the pipeline of having good potential reviewers for the future. So that's a new innovation that we're trying to add in this year. And then here, even though this is sort of one of the next things we have coming up, is our reunion at the American Academy of Neurology in 2019. we're inviting the current cohort as well, but we have that listed as kind of, this is one of the last steps of the course. And then we will be doing it again with the 2020 course currently slated to be in Ann Arbor. So I went a little, probably I went a little longer than I was hoping. At first, I think before I open it up generally, I was wondering if doctors Gutman, and you know, I don't know if Roger Lewis, one of our other course directors, has been able to join, but I was, I guess first, you know, Joy or Chris or Robin or Lori, was there anything I missed or anything that you want to add at this point in time?
Hi, it's Robin. I just wondered if you could say a little bit more about the biomarker track. We really tried to innovate that this year, and I think that it'll be quite exciting with Dr. Benatar as one of the participants. And then the people in Iowa who've done biomarker studies are participating, like Pagnopoulos and Michael Shai. So take it away.
Yeah, no, thank you for reminding me of that. It's not really explicitly in the syllabus. We've been continually trying to innovate and do some new things. We're taking a pause this year from the biostats track, not necessarily because we don't like it and we really actually hope to bring it back next year. It's just as we were trying to scale the course to the smaller size this year, it was a little hard to make sure we could make that into a quality experience. So consistently over the past few years, we've received some applications that have dealt with biomarkers, and they've had a varying degree of linkage to therapeutics. So for this year, we've used the opportunity and the great wealth of knowledge of scientists at Iowa to start to build out a small group that is focusing on projects that involve biomarkers, still with a eye towards therapeutics and not simply just prognosis or initial discovery of biomarkers. And we've added Dr. Mike Benatar from the University of Miami to that small group. So it's kind of an experimental small group. We'll be using some of the same structure for how we will progress through things in our small groups as I've just shown you, but we think this can be potentially exciting because I think in terms of clinical trial design, particularly for some of the people at the early stage level, these sorts of studies can be really helpful and potentially can be even more feasible for them to initiate and fund. And I think all of the neurology networks, Siren, Neuronext, and StrokeNet, would benefit from having more studies that are thinking about biomarkers and their relationship to treatment in a smart way. And we hope that we can help sort of elevate the rigor of some of those studies through the course this year. So it's an exciting new thing, and as with everything, we are working on making it as good as possible as we go along. But I think as Dr. Conway has pointed out, we have a tremendous amount of knowledge on our faculty, so that I think we will learn a lot, and I think we will do some great things with it, and we'll even be able to make it even better for next year, depending on how the experience goes. Chris or Lori, anything else? Or Joy, did I miss anything?
I think you have everything.
Yeah, I don't have
I think you
anything
covered
to add.
everything pretty well, Will.
All right, great. So I think the sort of next part of this is one of the things that sets this course apart from other types of training courses is that we are project-based, and that the real value and impact of this course both, I think, the faculty who have been teaching in it and from the trainees' perspective has been in the small group experience. So I think one thing that I think has been helpful is for us at the beginning here of the year to just sort of share some of what our experiences about things that have been either particularly effective or non-effective in terms of small groups that we've had over the course of our experience with the course. And also for those who haven't been small group leaders before, like Dr. Squig and Corley, like, any other, sort of questions you have about it. So I guess I would just sort of open up the floor to everybody at this point in time about the small group experiences.
This is Robin. I think there's always going to be a differential that some of the students are more well prepared and tend to be stars and others lag a bit behind, but that's normal. And, you might be really lucky and have 3 stars, but it's important to adjust to each person in the group, and having smaller groups will make that more possible this year. I know that Adam's felt that way, and you might want to expound on that.
Yeah, there are differences between the students. Some are much better prepared. Last year we had one student who really was on a different page than the rest of us, and we really had trouble with him during the entire summer. And finally, unfortunately, he dropped out, which was disappointing for all of us.
And and that's one thing, we do try to be proactive about those situations, but sometimes people realize that they've proposed something, whether it's a first-in-human molecule that they're not going to get from a pharmaceutical company. We've added more and more screening for those sorts of things with each year, but things do happen, and we do try to do what we can to pivot so that people can continue to make progress in the course. But yeah, sometimes things like that do happen.
In that case, we actually added a child neurologist because the person was in child neurology, and we thought that would, enhance the situation and add more meaning, but it made it more clear that he wasn't ready. So we have done major things to try to improve situations. Most of the time, though, we are able to get to the point where a student will have a proposal and something to go forward. So, but I do caution that patience is really important in this small group situation.
And
one thing that I would add is that it is sometimes useful to take the student out of the small group and just meet with them, maybe with one-on-one or with the 2 faculty and the student, to try to work through some certain areas, especially if one group member is far behind. But it really does sometimes help to clarify where they're headed and what their understanding of the project actually is.
And I was just going to say that they're also, depending on one of the things that Robin brought up was the situation where the trainee felt that the lack of child neurology expertise in the small group leaders was problematic. And we know that not all the projects will match the subspecialty of the faculty, and that's intentional. I mean, it'd be even harder to make these schedules if we did that. But we think that that's a benefit in that on an NIH study section, they're going to need to justify their science not simply to people who focus their entire career on, say, ALS, but a more diverse group of scientists who've studied other diseases. We hope that with I think particularly, the faculty are all very excellent, and I don't have any, I'm sure nobody is going to have any problems with this, but we always have the ability, I think, through the group knowledge of our group of faculty to have other people you could bounce projects off of. And like I said, I've bounced MS projects off Chris Coffey. Of every neuromuscular disease I bounce off Drs. Gutman and Conway. And so I think, we are here for those. We're going to, try these sort of Friday group talks so that you can present those things to it. But yeah, I mean, certainly if you need to bounce something off somebody at your institution or one of the other faculty with respect to your project, I think, making sure that that's clear. But I think we've done a good job over the years in terms of, making it clear to the trainees that, yes, it is important to get feedback from people who are sort of outside the silo you might be working in, and that will help you, not hurt you.
I do think this year that the competitiveness of the applicants has increased so that we might not have as many difficulties. And I think that you'll have it smoother. We're telling you sort of the worst case scenario.
Yeah, no, I think that's really a good point. We really are excited about the trainees and really are somewhat sad about where the pay line had to be in terms of where the cuts were made. So certainly we actually do have a few people who we could potentially slot into these spots who we think would actually be qualified in the event somebody has some sort of major sort of medical or other catastrophe that sort of prevented them. That window is not very long because we would want to make sure that they are active members of the small groups, but probably through mid-May, if somebody needs to drop out, we could potentially approach some of the folks from the waiting list this year who could replace them if necessary. Again, we don't want to do that, and I think we've done really well, I think, in terms of the scheduling of the groups and the selection of this group. But we would like to try to keep you engaged and make sure there's enough projects such that you're able to make the maximum impact on these. Chris, did you want to share any experiences about studies where people were looking at trying to fit 10 parameters to 10 patients?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think most, at least the statisticians, will be familiar with this. But I mean, one of the, I think, biggest challenges that's come up in the past that some may run into is when the magnitude of what's being proposed doesn't match the resources available to do it or to hone in on a question. I think that, one of the things that most of the students are doing, if anyone has looked at the proposals, are more earlier, maybe single center type studies. And often they're coming into it thinking a little more grandiose with bigger, late phase 2 or phase 3 type questions. And I think a lot of the early conversations are often focusing on, what's feasible, what can you do, providing, and then it often gets to, as the statistician in the group, telling them that, you just can't get the sample size to do what you want to do. And then you have to go back to the drawing board and revisit what might be doable for the course. I think the earlier those discussions take place, and that's why we've moved a lot of the small group activities before the in-person course to try to have those types of things resolved before everybody comes together so that the in-person time can be as productive as possible.
Does anybody else have any questions or thoughts they want to share?
This is Mark Quigg. Having not done this course before, is the focus solely on clinical trials, or would a good observational trial be appropriate for these guys to submit?
So I think that's sort of, in terms of the application process, the course is up with the current asterisks by the biomarker track is set up to developing some form of an intervention. It is not impossible, though, that in the process of going through the exercise, that whatever intervention they have planned may not be the right next step based on what turns out to really be known about the epidemiology or the natural history of the disease. So it is not impossible that people could be switched to those sorts of designs, but we're hoping that we've screened for that pretty well in the application process. And just because of the sort of structure of the design, the design of the course, we are focused on the delivery of some form of intervention as opposed to a general observational clinical research study. If that, hopefully that is, I don't know if Chris or Lori, you had anything to add.
This is Robin. Because the students have already been chosen with their projects, I think that it's unlikely that you'll have this problem of not having an intervention because they've already been pre-selected. But the idea was not to just do an observational study. It's harder to get those funded, at least at NIH right now. And so we were trying to come up with projects that had interventions. So the biomarker track is slightly different because they're going to be developing a biomarker, but it's still with an eye towards an intervention.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Yeah, the only thing I would add, which is a little maybe tangential to the question because it's an intervention, but kind of going back to something to put on the radar, people, as you get in your small groups. I think probably also one of the things that's come up frequently in the past involves intervention, and with the students being more junior in their careers, is that we've encountered many situations where they haven't thought through how feasible it is to actually get, or how expensive the intervention might be, or I talked to somebody and they thought it could be donated, but whether that's possible. So I think that's also an important thing to bring up in early conversations.
Yeah, thank you. I was just wondering, just because in my experience, guys at this stage in their career, sometimes the intervention just is not ready, and you need a good observational part of it. So maybe some of these may be steered that way depending upon how it goes, as you have observed.
Okay, I had another thought, although it just popped out of my head. I think it was something along the lines of one thing that doesn't come up often, but is something that we try to be sensitive to is, and we've attempted to screen for this in the application process, but we do feel that the trainee in our course ought to be the one who's the scientific driver of the ship of the project. Certain trials may make a lot of sense in the multiple PI type mechanism, depending on where they are with things. But we really want to make sure that what they are designing in this course, they are going to be the scientific leader for. And we have sort of ways of sort of, are they going to be the first author of the paper? Are they going to be submitting the IRB? Are they going to be submitting the IND? And if it turns out that they seem to be working on a project in conjunction with somebody more senior, again, we don't say that team science is bad necessarily, but we don't, the goal of this course is to develop the trainees. So if we feel that they are perhaps not going to be in a position to succeed or lead the project they're developing, that's something that, the course directors, we would love to know about. You don't necessarily need to actively, it's just, if it's something that you seem to be getting a sense maybe going on, we just want to be very cautious of that because, our two goals are to do good, rigorous clinical trials science and also to improve the pipeline of investigators who are going to be doing that good science. So if there's a situation where they might be not in a position to gain the benefits of the design of this trial and what would happen afterwards, then something we just want to screen for and look out for. Again, I'm an emergency physician, so we talk about a lot of worst case scenarios. This does not come up often. It comes up rarely, like maybe once every 2 years. But we just, we can usually steer things back in the right direction, and it may just be a little bit of a misunderstanding. Nothing has ever really gone off the rails because of that. But we want to make sure that it's more a matter of protecting the trainees and making sure that they're in a good spot. All right. Joy, did I miss anything that we wanted to cover?
I just want to make sure that during your first group that you do go over dates that you will meet, and if there are any dates that have been scheduled already, if you could just let Lisa Garnes or myself know so that we can cancel those for you or rearrange times and dates for you if needed.
Yeah, no, thank you for that reminder. That's something that we should definitely also emphasize on the student, the trainee orientation as well. So thank you. But yeah, kind of figuring out what your plan for the weeks are going to be is a crucial deliverable from the first session. All right, well, it was really a pleasure having a little conversation with everybody here today. And again, we will keep you posted about things. We'll get the final links to when all the webinars are soon, and the final version of the syllabus that incorporates the updated table of contents and things. And we'll get you more information about the sort of faculty meetings once those start being available. Again, optional opportunity to sort of show up, commiserate, and talk about what's going on in the projects. And again, I thank you all greatly for your time, and I think we're going to have a great time this year in the course.
Thanks, gang.
All right.